I've read 25 books this year, so let's talk about them. I've yet to film a reading wrap up this year, so I figured I would just do them quarterly. So these are all the books I've read from January through March. The first book I read this year was Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young, and this follows Wynn and Bo. These two meet at a Halloween party and become friendly, and Wynn finds herself pregnant. So we're watching the two of them navigate forming a friendship first. They put absolutely no pressure on starting a relationship, but instead just want to get to know one another. And I know we're only a few months into 2025, but I think this will be one of my favorite romances from the year. Then we have Finlay Donovan Rolls the Dice. This is a part of the Finlay Donovan series, which is a cozy mystery. I think this is book 4, so I can't really say much, but it takes place in Atlantic City, and we get to see all of our favorite side characters, and it's a lot of fun. I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't my favorite in the series, but I read it in less than 24 hours and had fun, so. Then we have The One and Only Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This was my first book by him, and I had so much fun with it. It will not be my last. Here we're following Kelsier and Vin, who don't know each other at the start of this book, but they have a few things in common, so they get to know one another. They're currently living in a world where the bad guy is the ruler, and they want to find hope in the world. And I'm just gonna leave it there. It is an amazing fantasy, and I cannot wait to continue this series. This Time Next Year by Sophie Cousins is the perfect book to read around the new year. We have Minnie and Quinn, who are both born on New Year's Day, and their lives have intertwined for quite some time. So we're following a bit of the past to see how they ended up where they are, but also in the present and why their lives keep intertwining. I thought this was a really fun synopsis, and it kind of reads like a British rom-com, but more contemporary than romance, and I just really enjoyed it. Then we have Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. And I picked this up because I had previously read One for My Enemy and loved it, but these two books are not similar in the slightest. If I had actually read The Flap in the bookstore, I don't think I would have bought it, but ultimately I am glad I did. This book made me feel uncomfortable at times, and we had some unlikable characters, but the poetic writing is what made me finish this, and I wanted to see how it went. With that being said, it did remind me a little bit of Magnolia Parks, just in that way of having unlikable characters and beautiful writing. In this book, we're following Reagan and Aldo, and they both are struggling with different things. And I've never used this term before, but I feel like this is a character study. This is literary fiction, and we're really just following these characters throughout this story. There's no strict plot, but yeah, it was interesting. I gave this 3 stars, and I think I'd stick by that. And next up, a warning. I'm sorry if you love these books, but I do not have it in me to talk about them for very long. We have Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm. The first 2 were a reread in preparation for Onyx Storm. Loved Fourth Wing again, gave it 5 stars. Iron Flame, ugh. I don't know, this book is too damn long. Maybe it's a 3 stars. I don't know. And lastly, Onyx Storm pissed me off as well. I'm giving it a 3 stars as well, maybe. They've occupied too much of my 2025. I need a break from the series. And the last book I read in January was You're the Only One I've Told, The Stories Behind Abortion. I unfortunately do not own this, but I want to pick it up. This was such a tough but important read, and I'm so glad I read it, even if I was uncomfortable at times, because these stories matter, they need to be heard, and I learned a lot from the various perspectives. Then that leads us into February, where I have my one and only DNF for the year, which is Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Now, despite this, she is still one of my auto-buy authors, and I'm excited to pick up what else she has. But this one was just a miss for me. If you're unfamiliar, it is a sports romance between a swimmer and a diver. And my main complaint with this book is that our MMC starts off in a relationship, which I believe is like a long-term relationship. And despite the fact that they obviously break up, I could not get over the fact that she is still a side character throughout the book, and they move on so quickly. I don't know, obviously I did not finish the book, but I just couldn't get past that. Then we have The Only One Left by Riley Sager, and initially I gave this 3 stars, but I think I'm gonna bump it up to 3.5. I think I was too harsh on it. I really did enjoy my time with this. Now, this is a thriller, so I don't want to say too much, but we have our main character, Kit, who is staying at this isolated mansion for the woman that is rumored to have killed like all of her family. The reason she's staying there is because she is that woman's in-home like nurse. She really needs the job, she really needs the money, so she has to take care of this like 70 or 80-year-old murderer, so the town says, but I will leave it at that. This was very fun. Then we have Frederick Bachman's Anxious People, and I just love this man's writing, so I knew I was going to somewhat enjoy it. And I'm just gonna read y'all what the flap says. It says it is a charming novel about a crime that never took place, a would-be bank robber who disappears into thin air, and 8 extremely anxious strangers who find they have more in common than they ever imagined. And to put it short, that is what it's about. But it just goes so much deeper into these characters and their flaws. Yeah, they really annoyed me. I think every single character annoyed me at some point. And although it was repetitive at times, I still really enjoyed this. I listened to it as an audiobook and would recommend. And then my most anticipated release of the year, and a title I still cannot say, we have Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This is obviously a continuation of the Emily Wilde series, which is just one of my favorite places to be, specifically for the academia vibes and how this author depicts the Fae. I don't know, the story is definitely not going to be for everyone, but I really enjoyed it. It is my least favorite in the series, just because the first 100 pages felt like one big epilogue of the previous book, which is fine, but I was expecting a little bit more from this story specifically because of the setting. I was just a touch disappointed, but I still love these characters, so I love the story, and I gave it a 4.25 stars. And then we have Scythe and Sparrow, which is part of the Ruinous Love trilogy that follows Leather and Lark and Butcher and Blackbird. Once again, unfortunately, this was my least favorite in the series. Nothing will top a Butcher and Blackbird. I highly recommend that if you're wanting to dive into dark romance, but this has like a big comedy aspect. The story follows the next brother, Dr. Fionn Kane, and circus performer Rose Evans. She indulges in a little bit of murder, and when a kill goes awry, she ends up with an injured leg and finds herself at Dr. Kane's office. And yeah, that's the setup, but I just didn't feel like these characters were fully fleshed out, and I also didn't think they had much of a connection. I feel so mean saying that, but this book just didn't do it for me. And dare I say, it was not dark enough. So yeah, that book gets 2 stars, but The Stolen Heir by Holly Black did not. This is a story from the Elfhame world. This book comes after the Cruel Prince trilogy, and it follows Jude's youngest brother, Oak. Little Oak is all grown up now, but just as annoying and manipulative. We follow his relationship with Seren, who is the child queen of the Court of Teeth. And honestly, I've read this, but even I'm confused on what happened in this book. So that's the synopsis I'm giving y'all. But in the moment, I was really enjoying this and had to pick up the next book. So it's a 3 stars. And last but not least, we have my best reading month of the year so far, where I read 11 books, starting off with The Prisoner's Throne, a continuation after The Stolen Heir. Honestly, these 2 books really blend together for me. It's hard to decipher what happened and what. But I do remember this book brought in more from the original trilogy, The Cruel Prince. So I really enjoyed that, and just the overall fairy tale vibe that this brought with like the tricks and whatnot. But Oak really pissed me off in this book, his unwillingness to communicate with quite literally anyone. But yeah, this is 4 stars. Then from my 24-hour readathon, we have The League of Gentlewomen Witches. What a title. This is a historical romance that follows a witch versus a pirate, and it's really goofy. This is also a fantasy, but there's barely any fantasy elements to this. Yeah, this is just one of those books you just don't take too seriously, but I still enjoyed it. I think I gave it a 3 stars. Then we have The Housemaid's Secret, which obviously follows The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. And I actually liked this book more than the first one. This book's pacing didn't follow the typical thriller format, and that really kept me on my toes, and I just really enjoyed this. I wasn't planning on continuing the series and picking up the 3rd book, but let me know in the comments if you think I should. And also from India Holton, we have The Secret Service of Tea and Treason. This was okay. It felt like every other book by India Holton. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have read those two books so close together because they really are copy and paste, but tweaking a few things. So, but they are fun and I do recommend, but spaced out and when you need something like this. Then we have my first 5-star of the year, The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. I'm not exaggerating when I say this book feels like it was written just for me. Oh, it had all of my favorite things. The comp titles to this are The Cruel Prince meets The Selection. Now, if you haven't read The Selection like me, it is similar to the Bachelor, Bachelorette franchise. Now, this is a historical fiction romance plus fantasy where we have these high society girls trying to win the Fae Prince's heart. Our main character Ivy has been through a lot, so winning this competition would mean a lot for her and her family. I'm going to leave the synopsis there. This was so much fun and I can't wait for the second book. And next up we have another Finlay Donovan book. Y'all already know the deal with these. This is Finlay Donovan Digs Her Own Grave. And this one really stood out to me because it is much cozier than the others. Finlay kind of takes a step back from the actual killing in this book, so she's trying to figure out who done it. And it involved her neighbor, Mrs. Haggerty, who I just think is so annoying but funny. So yeah, this one was super enjoyable. Then we have Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. This is a part of the Blue Rebel Ranch series, and it's my first cowboy romance of the year. I picked this up while I was on vacation at the beach because it just gave summer vibes. And I do think this is my favorite out of the series so far. We have Teddy and Gus, and their connection is undeniable in my opinion. It's an enemies to lovers, so immediately we're seeing that banter, but Teddy ends up having to be Gus's daughter's babysitter for the summer. So we're seeing some forced proximity, and I think the child really added to this story, and yeah, it was just very cute. I will say I enjoyed the beginning of this book so much more than the end, which is quite rare for me. I don't know why, I was just disappointed by the third act conflict and it felt redundant. I was hoping Teddy's job problem would have been the third act conflict, but it wasn't, and that was just thrown into the epilogue, which I thought was lazy. Okay, I promise we're getting close to the end, but I read Pet for the Trans Rights Readathon, which I'm so glad I did. This is a short little young adult book, but don't let that put you off from reading it because it does have a deeper meaning than you would expect, and it packed a punch. We have our main character, Jam, and Pet is indeed a creature. He has horns and colors and claws, and he emerges from one of her mother's paintings. Definitely not scary at all, but Pet's purpose for coming is actually to hunt a monster, even though we are to believe there are no monsters left in this world. And it's really fun to read this and let the story unravel, so I'm going to leave it there. Then we have All This Twisted Glory. This comes after This Woven Kingdom and These Infinite Threads. I'm very conflicted on this book because on one hand, I was giggling and kicking my feet while reading this, but on the other hand, do these characters even know each other? Have they had more than 10 conversations? I don't know. Anyways, on top of that, this was also a classic middle book. I feel like nothing really even happened, but I do enjoy these characters, so I think it's like a 3.75. One thing I will warn y'all about is this book has a lot of descriptive scenes when our characters are in pain, and that was really hard for me to get through. Also, I'm not giving you a synopsis because it is the third book in the series, sorry. And then we have a 1-star read from me. This is The Godparent Trap, where we have Colby and Rip, yes, his name is Rip, become guardians to these 2 children because people close to them passed. So I mean, it kind of sounds like a cute setup, like forced proximity and everything, but it was not. This man was insufferable. He just thought he was better than her and was constantly putting her down until he wasn't, and I just could not get behind that. I wanted to scream at this man to tell him that just because they're different does not mean that he's better than her. 1 star, would not recommend. And the last book for this quarter is Woodworking by Emily St. James. This is her debut novel and I gave it a 4.5 stars. I also read this for the Trans Rights Readathon and I want to shout from the rooftops on how good of a book this is. I seriously miss these characters so much. We have Erica, who is a 35-year-old recently divorced trans school teacher. And then we have Abigail, who attends that same school and is 17 and is the only openly trans person in like the county. It takes place in South Dakota. So despite Erica admitting to herself that she is trans, she is so scared to navigate this. And that's when she seeks out Abigail, who is annoyed by the idea of spending her senior year secretly guiding her English teacher through her transition. But Abigail is just a character. All of these characters are fully fleshed out and I love them. But yeah, they spark an unlikely friendship and I just loved this story so much. I listened to this via audiobook and it gave the words so much life and sarcasm. I really enjoyed it. I loved everyone's stories and how they gave different perspectives on the ages of transitioning. Yeah, the only reason I'm not giving it a 5 stars is because I was wanting some closure on certain aspects, and I've really been thinking about that and if it was done on purpose because maybe those characters didn't get the closure they wanted and so us as readers didn't either. I'm not sure, but like I said, 4.5 stars, highly recommend. And that wraps up the 25 books I've read so far this year. I'm so done talking, so I'm sure y'all are done listening. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope to see y'all in the next one. Bye guys.